All right, so the first part of making a handle is making a coil. So let's roll out. So everybody get out some of their good clay. So good clay meaning their bag clay that's new. This is not good for making reclaim, using reclaim, and you'll need some water, like that, a big bucket of water. So everybody get those out, and I'm just gonna start. And those of you that aren't quite set up, you guys could watch the video later and do this. So I open up my bag like that, and I'm gonna get a chunk, right, of clay, like that. And it doesn't matter, but you see how it's just a blob? It's not anything exciting, right? And I'll put that bag of clay on the floor. You may also, I know most of you may have already gotten a bat out. You may want a bat, and you'll do this at your table, right? And so what are you gonna do? You're gonna start by making a coil, just like how we normally make a coil, like this. We squeeze it out, and then we roll out. So I know that we haven't made a coil in a week or two, but we're just gonna go for it here and make one, right? And so we use the full hand, and we go back and forth like that, woohoo, right? So use the whole thing, and then I already know that this is a lot of handle, right? And I'm still really thick, so I am going to cut this in half. I'll put this blob back in the bag, because I know I may only need one. So how chubby am I gonna make this? I don't know, like that big around. Is there a good reference point? Like, look at your fingers. It probably needs to be chubbier than your fingers are, right? But you have to think about your mug too, right? So I don't think okay, when those come back around, if you have a really wide, squatty, it's almost like a bowl, probably your handle needs to be wider, right? A thin, slender handle is gonna work that good. Yeah, put them over there. But like this handle, this guy here just would need a wider handle just because it's short and squatty, right? So this coil already may be too thin, right? A smaller handle would need and if you're making a big, tall thing, it needs a big, tall, long handle. So depending, so now I just know I don't need that much, so I'm gonna cut that in half again. So how do we make this? So the beauty of your coil, the perfection of your coil, how good it is will determine how good your handle is. So if this coil already doesn't look that good, your handle's not gonna end up looking that good. So now I'm gonna show you a trick for making even better coils. You have you have your table, right? You have this guy, your coil that's close to the side, and then you get another flat thing. It could be a bat, it could be a board. Then what I'm gonna do is this. Let me lower this down so you guys can see a little bit better from the side. Let's go to the side view. So what I'm gonna do here is take this guy, put it on top, and then I'm just gonna press down and roll back and forth. Since the coil isn't round, before I start doing that, when it gets to the taller places, it'll push me up more, right? Because this isn't round. And then when it gets to the thinner places, or when the coil wants to drop down, the board will want to drop down. So when I do this, when I feel this push me up a little bit, I will actually push down a little bit more. When I feel my coil dropping away, I'll let go of the pressure. So ideally, right, I'll do this like this back and forth, and because I'm rolling it against two flat surfaces, it should get more rounder. Do you see that? And so do you get this right away at first? One secret little trick to doing this, make sure that these ends are pointy. You see how I'm pointifying the ends like that a little bit? Because what happens is you'll end up sometimes with a hollow tube. It's very strange if you don't point the ends. So can you do this and start with a big fat piece of clay? No, because if you start with it just doesn't work to really roll a big fat piece of clay to roll out your coil to make it close, and just at the final stages do this. So you want to start with a coil pretty close to you, and then when you roll, you want to go a long ways up and down. If you just do in one spot like that back and forth, you'll end up with an oval, right? Because you're just rolling the coil back and forth in one spot. It'll end up So you want to make sure that coil underneath is going back and forth. All right, so now it doesn't matter if you're close or far away, everybody stop. So you see here, I end up with this, right? It's okay if your coil doesn't look good, right? Because now what we're gonna do is, we have a perfect coil, But we could also attach it onto our thing. If you wanted a coily looking handle, there's an issue with coil handles is that since they're kind of round, right? They're basically this round shape, right? You see that circular in this direction, a coil. When it's like this, there has a tendency for you don't have any control on whether your cup begins to slide back and forth because it has no flatness. I have noticed that, but a round handle can work, right? A round handle can work. So like you're in your thing, your cup, when you start tipping it to drink, right? It's straight up and down. When I tip it to drink, the handle, you have no control on whether does that make sense? So I don't like round handles, but you can convince me otherwise. All right, so here, now I take that coil and then I squash it flat. I will just take this and very lightly squash it down, right? And then it should stick here, and you can see how I ended up now with a squash thing. And you can see now it looks much more closer to handle-like, right? It's beautiful, right? You see that, how it's much more closer to squashiness, right, to the handle. But there's one more secret step, and this is the part, because I could have shown you all of that when we first did handles, right? It's not that hard. We don't show you how to make coils this way at first because there is a skill to making a good coil, fundamental skill to making a good coil. We're rolling out with it. Yeah, you got to get it good with your hands. It's just a fundamental good skill. All right, so I'm bringing my bucket of water over. So everybody take their coil that they've made so far. And this is okay if you haven't gotten there yet, because I have a video for this. Take your coil and hold it by the top in your off hand. So dominant hand is free, right? The non-dominant hand, for me, it's my left hand, is not free. It's holding over the top. You guys see that? Over the top? So everyone that has their coil ready, have it ready like this. I pinch it this way like that, but however you want to do it. This hand is going to get wet. That's my dominant hand. That's my action hand. So I'm going to dip my coil in my bucket of water, boop, but I'm not going to get my hand wet or the top part of the coil wet, boop. If it needs to fold over like that, so I got all of that wet except for my hand. Maybe this needs to be backed off even further so you can see it more. But I need to get it in the right spot. All right, so then I take my dominant hand and also boop, dip that in water, right? So this is all wet, that's all wet. I'm gonna take this hand and kind of take my thumb and index finger and do that, make a space. So I'm gonna hold it like that, and then I'm gonna take it like that, you see that? And I just pinch it and I go whoop, all the way down off, and lightly do it. I go whoop, all the way down off, right? And I keep wetting this down, whoop, 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 over and over. So what am I doing is basically regularizing the handle so it doesn't look, there's a quality to a pulled handle. So that's what we're doing. We dip this in water. If this starts getting really dry, we dip that whole thing in water, keep the top of my hand dry, whoop, whoop, whoop. And what it does is it's kind of magical. It makes it look more regular and more mechanical or more regular, and what it does is smooths it out. It gives you a little bit more control over how it looks, and there's a mechanical nature to the thrown item, right? We have the wheel, we're throwing, we're doing this. There's something magical about a pulled handle that makes it look really good. And you see every once in a while I turn it, I hold it, I turn my hand around, and I turn it around. Because there is a tendency for you, when you pull, to pull, I gotta make sure I get it in a direction like that, right? Where you kind of pull in off to the side. It's just that your elbow has see how your elbow, you're kind of turning around your elbow. So there's a tendency for when you turn around your elbow to pull this way, right? It's just instinct. So then every once in a while, you'll see it starting to tail one way or the other. So then you just turn it 180 and then you do the same thing, right? Now, you could do little tricks where sometimes your thumb, there's a little bone right there, right? In your thumb. So everybody, like, if you can see it, there's a little bone right there in your hand. You could put that bone right into the handle spot. Let's do it from the side. You could put that bone right in the handle's crux of that handle, and you could use that. That will create a little thinner spot there. You see how I just did it? You see how there's a slightly thinner spot? So like that, you could do a trick, or you could do this for a few strokes. You could take your thumb and put it in that spot. You see that? And just go down like that. Whoosh, you see that, how that's doing? Whoosh, like that. Let's see if the side view could see it better. So I dip my finger in there and I just do that a few times, right? So you see how that's creating a furrow. That, if you look at my backhand, my index finger is curled around the back. Let's do it from the top down, right? You see how when I do this, it's like this. I'm pushing against the thumb, and then you see how my back is curled. So that will make this part positive curve, this part will have a concave curve, right? You could trick it like that. So why is that important? So that when you have it, you see how your hand naturally can hold a handle like that when your hand is wrapped around, and then your thumb goes somewhere, right? Your thumb has a little spot right there, boop, to put itself. There's lots of things you could do with this, right? You could just keep it straight, try to keep it straight. There's lots of little tricks, so experiment around, right? So let's try one more little thing. You can bring back your thing here, right? And so I brought back my bat. I want to wet it down. So remember that the HardieBacker board surface that we're working on is porous or non-porous? You remember? Porous, it absorbs water. So the clay, when the clay is wet like this, actually will stick to it. Since this is non-porous, you see it's not absorbing the water. I can actually put my handle down on there. So side view, let's get down low now. And the whole thing is wet, so the whole thing the handle won't stick. You see how it just kind of slides around on there really good? Don't have to do that part. Then I could wet my fingers down and I could just push down against here. So I could use my thumb. You guys can't see it. Let's get down to a different place so you guys could see it better. Luckily, these cameras are movable, but it's hard for me to figure out which direction to go. Then I could either take my thumb and just push down the middle, and it pushes down against there. I could do a little trick where I hold my fingers like this, and I could just do this. So everything is wet all the time, right? And I could do a trick like this where I just swoosh it down like that. You see how let's do it with this hand. You see I'm basically doing that, except with my dominant hand. This is my non-dominant hand, right? And I'm just going whoosh, whoosh, or I could go whoosh, and then you see how it's sculpting the handle a little bit to what I want, right? Or I could do this, I could just lay it flat. Whatever you think works, you could create handle profiles, right? Create a slightly different shape. But a couple things to know. When we're holding the handle, right? Remember we talked about lips and rims. Our lips are soft, don't like pointy things, jabbing into them. A little bit the same way with our hands, right? When we grip it, right, it likes a certain shape of thing, right? And if it's too pointy, right, it has spikes or lots of things going on there, it doesn't work, right? Now, do I do this with my handles normally? No. Right? For me personally, I do not lay it on the bat and do this, but as an option for you to try different things out, right? I can create different profiles, right? Just by swooshing it. Now, you do not get to keep it on here forever because eventually it will start sticking. Like this is already starting to stick a little bit. Let's see if it comes off because I was talking too long. It's essential that this is wet, right? It has to stay wet because the clay is always absorbing some water. All right, so now I have this wet, goopy piece of clay, right? And now what I do with it is give me a second. What I will do is usually on my board, I will take it and, ooh, this clay got really goopy. Like I'll put it on my board like that. So I have a lot more handle than I need, right? I'm probably just gonna use this top part. And this could go on my table, on like a far corner of my table. I just let it rest because it's really wet. So it needs some time to chill out and get dry because I can't attach it. The goal would be to attach it before the end of class. So if you have your handle, put it far away because you will need your prime table space for wedging, throwing, whatever, right? So I have it on a different board because I don't want to reset up my cameras, but on my table, I would have set my handle far, far away, right, from the edge. All right, so any questions about the handle pulling, other than you haven't done it yet, some of you? You always make it, when you know you're gonna trim a cup, that's actually a very good question. So I should have told you this, right? So we're making handles today because I am about to trim a cup and they will need handles. So because that handle is so wet, right, I need to make it before I start trimming because this needs a chance to dry. So we're doing it in the order that we would normally do it. Handles first for the cups I need to make because I need to have handles for my cups. It'll be like 20 minutes of trimming, 30 minutes of trimming, and then I'll show you after I trim how to attach them. That makes sense. So we're doing this in the order that you would do it if you were doing it during class. All right, so this goes away. And then